Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Eric Alonso to my fit and proper test. It's Justin Peach.
Good afternoon to you, Ryan.
Justin, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. You'd be surprised to hear.
What a Derby fan. Doing very well for once. How coincidental. You are listening to the biggest championship-specific podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Yes, the reason Justin is feeling very, very good today is because of what happened on Saturday. What a final day, ladies and gentlemen. What a final day. If you wanted any more proof that the Championship is the best league in the world, look no further. It was an absolute roller coaster. I felt like I'd been through 12 rounds with Anthony Joshua afterwards. I was exhausted, but we were hoping the relegation battle would be dramatic. It certainly was. And it was worth pointing out at various different points, each team was staying up. It was just absolutely crazy, wasn't it, Justin?
It's exactly what you need in a final day relegation showdown, is every team to be outside the bottom three, every team to be bottom, essentially. You know, Wycombe were other than the 9-goal swing, they picked up 3 points as well. They came off the bottom of the table. It was utterly crazy, and it's weird. Obviously, we did a live stream alongside it. It was so weird just being involved in it at the time, because you just savor it completely differently as you would coming into a podcast. Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. And I hope I don't go through it again as a fan, but as a neutral, it was absolutely fantastic.
Well, we're getting quite used to final days in the Championship just being absolutely balmy. We saw that last season, didn't we, with the fiasco surrounding Barnsley and none of the teams going for automatic promotion winning. But even away from the relegation battle, all the other teams took our advice, Justin, where if you've got nothing to play for, just put on a show. Forget about defending. Absolutely. There was 48 goals from 12 games in the Championship on Saturday. Every game had at least 2 goals. It was just unbelievable. It's one of those days that you just won't forget, and that's why we bloody love the Championship. But let's crack on with the action then, Justin. What we'll do is we'll talk about the 2 relegation battle games, talk about what relegation means for Rotherham and Wednesday, and what staying up means for Derby. The only other order of business which needs sorting out is who's playing who in the playoffs. So we'll have a brief chat about that. Of course, we've got our playoff previews coming up, so I don't want to go into too much depth about that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be spending much time talking about the teams involved in neither the relegation battle or playoffs this week. We will be grading each team's season at a later date, so you have that to look forward to if your team had a less eventful final day. But let's crack on, Justin. Derby 3, Wednesday 3. So many emotions in this game. I think they only got ramped up even more after Rotherham scored early at Cardiff, which meant Wednesday were going down and Derby had to win. And this game was just unbelievable.
Yeah, the first half was quite tepid, wasn't it? You know, it was we things started to simmer a little bit. There were some big chances for Derby, and ultimately Wednesday scored against the run of play. Especially when you consider the chances, and the game just flew into life after half time, which for both sides doesn't normally happen. So we're not used to it as supporters, seeing that happen. And as you say, the teams they had to go for it. Rotherham getting an early goal was the best thing for them and the worst thing for Derby and Wednesday, because that meant the pressure was just mountain high. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, both teams led at different points in the game as well, which just ramped it up even more. As you quite rightly said, it was a very cagey first half, and then second half, it just opened up so much. Both teams had some really good chances. And in the end, I thought a draw was a fair result.
Oh, yeah.
And after Derby realised they were staying up with a draw, it looked as if Rooney was more than happy to take that.
Definitely. And when you consider how emotional he was in his post-match presser, he really was. A draw was absolutely the fair result, and it is literally the case of one player kept Derby in the Championship and relegated the likes of Wednesday and Rotherham. That was Marlon Pack. Quite simply put, one man was the difference in all of this. I know Waghorn was monumental against Wednesday, but it was Marlon Pack who did the business for Derby County.
Yeah, Marlon Pack has suddenly become a very popular man in Derby. Wayne Rooney asked his players, to leave it all out there. The fans had a banner asking them to do the same, which was held up outside the grounds before the game for the players to see. And to be fair, the players did leave it out there, didn't they?
And then some. Martin Wycombe left some on the post as well. He did. It's all you need from your players in that situation is just give everything you've got. You've had 45 games to do it. It's not worked out. This is your final chance. And it really was the final chance. We saw Patrick Roberts, who has been inconsistent. He's been in and out of games, and it felt like he left it out there. Martin Wycombe has had a really poor season. You were saying a lot during the live stream about how poor he's been this season, how underwhelming he's been, how Derby fans might like to see the back of him. I have to give him a 3-year deal after that performance. Curtis Davis, the stories about Curtis Davis coming out, how he had to sign a waiver to make sure the club wasn't liable for any injury caused because he tore his Achilles in December and he came on and played in that game. He's not trained. He's barely done any fitness work, and he said himself that as long as he felt fine twisting and turning, he'll get through that final 15 minutes, and he did. It was incredible. It really was fairy tale stuff.
Yeah, it really was. That's not to say the Wednesday players didn't leave it out there either. Both
Absolutely.
sides were putting in so much effort, and you could see it meant so much to all the players. And the thing we were saying as well, a lot of those Derby players aren't going to be there next season, and that's something we'll get onto a bit later on when we talk about Derby next season. Loads of them are on loan or out of contract in the summer. So it's not their futures necessarily on the line, but you couldn't tell that by the way they were playing. So you've got to ask the question, why weren't they showing this passion all season?
It's weird, isn't it? You can say this about any club that's in this situation is why is it taking 45 games to get to this point? Why is it taking you 45 games to show that you have the ability to do something? And sometimes it's confidence. It being a one-off game in a certain way was the best thing for Derby and Wednesday and even Rotherham, because they could just go out there and do what they needed to do. And as we saw, all teams drew. There wasn't much separating any of these teams, and Wednesday and Rotherham can count themselves unlucky. But you look at Wycombe as well, 1-3-0. They left it all out there as well. But as you say, it's what's happened before that has essentially let these teams down, because we've seen that they are good when they can be.
Yeah, we'll talk more in depth about that in just a sec. Let's go to the Rotherham game. They needed to win to stand any chance of staying up, and looked like they were going to pull it off before a late equaliser from Marlon Pack for Cardiff meant it finished 1-1. But by all accounts, this game should have been about 6-0 at half-time, because Rotherham missed some unbelievable chances.
I can't imagine being a Rotherham fan in this situation, just seeing chance after chance go begging. You're tearing your hair out. If you've got no hair, you're biting your fingernails. I can't envisage what it would have been like just to see those chances flash by. And you're always going to get an extra chance. You're always going to get another chance to go ahead. But that many in the first half, you have to take them. You have to take them. And they didn't. And they have paid the price, because at 2-0, Rotherham win that. Absolutely, yeah. They win that. But left it open for Cardiff to get back into the game at 1-0.
Yeah, Cardiff barely had a sniff of goal. So the fact they managed to get that last-minute equaliser was a real sucker punch for Rotherham. And it was quite ironic, really, that the one goal Rotherham actually did score was a screamer from 25 yards out, the hardest chance of all, really. So, yeah, I think missed chances sums up Rotherham quite a lot recently, because some of the chances they've missed, if you made a compilation of the chances they missed over the past month or so, you'd be thinking to yourself, well, in fact, it's something that you're well in your rights now to think, how on earth have Rotherham got relegated?
You talk about missed chances, but the biggest missed chance of all is having 4 or 5 games in hand on the teams above them, and they couldn't take them. They lost those games. That's the biggest chance. And going into the minuscule detail, they missed a lot of chances in games to get results, and it just didn't have enough. And that's all you can really say, because for a team of Rotherham stature getting to this point in the season, I think not only that, but you're competing with Wednesday and Derby, who have probably quadruple your playing budget. You've gone toe to toe with them throughout the season. You've probably been the better team against these sides. I think Rotherham beat Derby without reply twice. They beat Wednesday, that Ladapo screamer. And you are literally talking about missed chances in other games. That's what's let them down, and they've gone down as a result. That is the only reason why they are down, is because they failed to jump that very small last hurdle.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about Rotherham's season as a whole and what next season will mean for them very shortly. Let's talk about Derby then, because they have managed to stay up by the skin of their teeth on the last day of the season. Not really sure how they've managed it, Justin, because they've been fairly atrocious over the past couple of months. And I suppose the first place you've got to start with, apart from obviously the takeover, which is another thing we'll get onto later, is the manager. Wayne Rooney has not particularly impressed Derby fans over, I'm going to say, the course of his tenure, really. I was going to say initially over the past couple of months, but it's really ever since he took the job on, really. And you as a Derby fan, Wayne Rooney, yes or no, do you hang on to him for next season?
I think it would be unfair to get rid of him, because has he really been given a fair crack at the whip? I don't think he has. He's been let down by the hierarchy at the club. He's on his second takeover at current recording, could be a third at any point. He's really been through it. Tactically, there's still a lot to learn for him, but I think, as Colin Richards said in one of his interviews after the game yesterday, he said that the young players are going to be more experienced for this. They're going to be more experienced for the experience that they've gone through, and it's going to be the same with Wayne Rooney. Essentially, he's going to be more experienced for what he's been put through. He's going to have learned a lot, and will he be a better manager because of it? Maybe, but I think he should be given a fair crack with the transfer window under new ownership.
That is quite interesting you say that, though, because you've not particularly been a massive fan of Mr. Rooney, especially recently.
I've been in panic mode for the last 6 weeks. Since that, I can't remember, it might have been the Cardiff defeat or even the Preston defeat a few games later. I would have removed Rooney and put in McLaren. I'm sure the hierarchy will be saying it's a masterstroke that they kept Rooney on board to see it out. But if we're being honest, Derby were ready. Derby stayed up, should I say, because Rotherham couldn't see themselves over the line, and because Wednesday had a points deduction. If those things hadn't have happened, Derby would be down. That's as simple as that. They were kept up by a Cardiff City player. So there are clear improvements that need to be made, and I think Wayne Rooney needs to have an opportunity to work with a team and then give him 10, 15 games into the next season, if Derby can afford that.
I get your point, but wouldn't you also say that this is a really crucial time for Derby County as a football club, because I can't see them particularly improving at the moment on this season, next season, which we'll go on to in just a sec. But at the same time, you can't really afford to give a young manager a chance after chance after chance, can you? And what I put forward to you as kind of an opposing kind of an opinion, would you possibly say that getting in an experienced manager instead would be a better way of going about it? Someone who's got more of a track record in management in the Championship?
It depends what the ownership situation is. If it's Mel Morris still, then God forbid that is the case. I'm just trying to think of a scenario that works with him still in charge of the club. I don't think one does. I think Derby go down if that's the case, whoever's in charge. If it's Eric Alonso, he's already said he wants Wayne Rooney. So that's that, and he's inexperienced himself, so I doubt he's going to make the right decision straight away. If it's another ownership group, they might want to bring in their own man who's got more experience, who can safeguard and shepherd the club away from this tumultuous period that they've been put through. It's very hard to judge Rooney. I find it very difficult to judge Rooney because of the ownership situation, because of not being able to bring in players in January that he wanted to bring in, and because of the injuries that have happened to some of the players. Mengi was ruled out for the season. Lee Gregory ruled out for the season. It's really hard to judge him. But I think given a pre-season and a transfer window would be the fair thing to do. That's me being very, very cautious as well.
I would disagree with you. I don't think it is going to happen. I think Rooney will be in charge next season. I'll be very surprised if he's not. But if I was the owner of Derby County, I'd be looking at the situation and think, right, we just need to rip everything up and just start again. Rooney has been dealt a tough hand in his first managerial job, but having said that, he's not covered himself in glory at times. Some of the goals Derby have conceded have been extremely poor. That's not necessarily down to him, but at the same time, if it keeps happening again and again and again, then you have got to start pointing fingers at the manager. The other thing is as well, he has mismanaged games so many times this season, and it's been so obvious as well when it's been down to poor mismanagement. I'm thinking of the most recent games against Birmingham and Swansea, for example, where Derby were leading, the opposition make a tactical change, and then Derby concede 2 goals. It's just sloppy, and as a manager, a good manager wouldn't let that happen. So I'm all for, giving young managers a chance, but in this occasion, I don't think you can, because Derby are in such a fragile state at the moment, and I don't think they can afford to, just keep giving a young manager chance after chance. It's got to be pointed out as well, if this wasn't England's all-time record goal scorer, Man United's all-time record goal scorer, England legend, he wouldn't have been given this many chances. Do you know what I mean?
No, I agree. I agree that his legendary status as in a playing career has safeguarded him from any rush decision. It'd be easier to sack Nigel Clough. It'd be easier to sack Alex Neil because these aren't household European heavyweights, shall we say. So yeah, I do agree that does help, but I don't think you can pull the trigger immediately on a guy who has ultimately been shafted by Mel Morris and Stephen Pearce. He's been left to field every single question by journalists, and he's felt the brunt of it. And I think that's been unfair, and I've probably been unfair in my criticism of him as well.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk about the situation next season then, because Derby are in a very interesting state in terms of playing squad, aren't they? At the moment, as it stands, they've got 15 senior players contracted for next season. And when I say 15, I'm being very generous there. I'm going to say at least 5 of them are, teenagers, players under 21. There aren't any centre-backs in that group. There's 3 defenders. And when you look at the squad, there's a lot of work to be done over the summer, isn't there?
God, yes. Absolutely, yes. There was a lot of work that needed to be done in January. But yeah, you're right. The club is on its knees. There's a very joyous moment that everybody should savour in beating relegation on the final day of the season, but the hard work has to start today. It has to start at, I don't know when the game finished, at 3:01 yesterday. Everything has to shift to bringing in the right personnel. Personally, I give Curtis Davis another year on vastly reduced terms. He's 36. There's no way he can be earning over 20 grand a week, for example, which is his rumoured salary. I think Derby need his leadership, need his ability, and he'd be a very good centre half to have on board for the younger group. I'd give Waghorn a couple of years as well, just because I think he showed yesterday what he's capable of. Not only did he collide with the post and come out better for it, his goal showcased what he's about, his ability. His header was fantastic, and his ball for Jozwiak for the penalty showed what he can do elsewhere on the pitch. And George Edmondson, I think they need to go for him. The rest is down to Derby's really bad recruitment policy.
That's the big worry, isn't it? Derby's recruitment over the past few years hasn't exactly been glittering, has it? I would say that a lot of work needs to be done. That goes without saying, I suppose. But the way I look at things right now, when we're in this position and we've still got a whole summer ahead and plenty could happen in that time, I do look at Derby and think to myself, they must be the favourites at the moment to go down next season, because we just don't know what state they're going to be in at the moment. And the 2 clubs who have come up from League One, I fancy them to do quite well next season. And Derby are in just an absolute mess at the moment. So unless there's a change of ownership and that really sorts everything out in terms of getting the players in and what have you, then I just feel like Derby are just going to be having another season like this. We had the joy that we saw from yesterday with the fans celebrating outside the ground, but as you say, now that the dust is settled, they need to properly figure out what on earth is going on with this club.
And a really important point to make is the club aren't out of the woods yet. There's still an EFL charge hanging over them. There's still the threat of potential administration if any investment falls through, any change of ownership falls through. The club really is in a fragile state. It's like walking over, I don't know, a tightrope that is splintering at either end. That's the state that Derby are in at the moment, and it could all go south very quickly. And of course, they can still be deducted points. We saw with Macclesfield a couple of years ago that they were deducted points after this season and then subsequently relegated. That could still happen to Derby if they were plunged into administration.
Imagine if that happens. That would be so harsh after managing to stay up on the last day of the season. Right, Justin, let's have a break. After that, we'll talk about how we think Wednesday and Rotherham are going to do next season and a quick run through all the other games in the Championship.
Not that I want to see a bigger screen of you, you ugly bastard. Don't edit that bit out.
Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. So let's start talking about Sheffield Wednesday, shall we, Justin? They were the team who lost out right at the death on the final day. Was trying really hard to get back into it, but just missed out. If they managed to get one more goal, that could have been it. It would have been back in the Championship next season. But I do look at Wednesday, and they're in a very similar position to Derby, aren't they? In the way that terrible ownership has let them get into the position that they're in. And now it's a worrying few months for Sheffield Wednesday fans.
It is, but I think the difference with Derby is Chansiri actually, I think, he cares about the club and he cares about Sheffield Wednesday, but he does it very badly. He's still writing off losses. He's still paying the bills. He's not taking in any loans that I know of, like Derby have. So I think he's still his heart is in the right place. He's just not got a football brain by any means. He just has no idea how to run the club football in a football sense, which is ultimately plunged Wednesday into the position that they're in now. You're looking at recruitment. You're looking at advisors that have come through the club, managerial appointments. All of it has been because of his lack of foresight from a footballing sense. For example, to be fair, Garriment wasn't a bad appointment, I don't think, but the recruitment side of it let him down essentially, and they never really recovered from Steve Bruce resigning either.
I think they've suffered from bad advice, haven't they? It seems like the people who are giving Chansiri advice have really let him down in a sense, because I think you're quite right. Recruitment has been the real sticking point, and the constant sacking of managers and the points deduction as well. So there's all these different factors that have gone into this big melting pot and have ultimately, buggered Wednesday. It is also worth pointing out they've dropped 29 points from winning positions this season, which is not a fantastic stat to see either when from a manager's standpoint, that must be just bloody frustrating. So we look at how they are now, and they're also in a similar position to Derby in the sense that it's going to be interesting to see who's actually playing for them next season, because there's some players on big wages there. Some of them are out of contract as well. Jordan Rhodes is the big name on there. I can't see him hanging around at Hillsborough next season. But on a positive side, they have also got some good players to have in a League One team. Barry Bannon almost looks certain to be playing for them next season. He signed a new deal not too long ago, and I think there's a clause in there that means he'll have a wage reduction now that they're in League One, so he won't be as much of a financial burden because he's also quite a high earner. So if they do manage to keep hold of a good group of these players, then you'd fancy Wednesday to bounce back, especially with Darren Moore in charge.
I think Darren Moore's the factor for me. I think what we've seen from Wednesday, I mentioned it in the live stream yesterday, how many different styles they've been through this season alone. You're looking at Gary Monk, there's Lee Bullen, although that's less of a traumatic change in style because he's obviously already at the club. You've got Neil Thompson, Tony Pulis. Yep. And then obviously Darren Moore as well. And the way Darren Moore's transformed the team, they were very organised against Derby. And if it wasn't for individual errors, Derby scored 3 goals in the second half. And they were mostly down to poor decision making at key points for Wednesday. They'd have been fine if they'd appointed Darren Moore earlier on in the season. I think they'd have been fine. This is what we're talking about in terms of decision making at the top being too slow. Transferring not being of a footballing mould, because these are the things that needed to be done early. And it was a risk hiring Darren Moore, but I think it's going to pay off in the long term for them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We were talking to Dan, weren't we, from the Wednesday Week podcast about it, and he was saying that it's an appointment that's almost in preparation for League One. And you look at it when you're in the Championship and you still got a chance of staying up, it is a bit negative, but in the long term, it's not a bad move, really. And I think Darren Moore is the best person for the Wednesday job at the moment. He did a fantastic job, didn't he, at Doncaster before Wednesday snatched him off him. And he's done a decent job, admittedly not getting much points on the board, but the performances have improved. And he's done a decent job in the time that he has been at Wednesday already. So I think there's plenty to be positive about. That when you look at, the owner and what have you, then it's all a bit of a mess behind the scenes, but out on the pitch, Wednesday could go quite well next season. And I'm looking at this and thinking, yeah, I fancy them to bounce back.
I fancy them to win the league in a similar sense to what Hull did. They need to replace some of the forward options. I think Kachunga, he'll be on his way. We mentioned Jordan Rhodes is out of contract. I think actually he's been one of their best players over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks. You've got a couple of other forward options. Patterson might move on. Windass move on. If they don't, those two are very good League One forwards who are going to score a lot of goals for Wednesday. For me, they will bounce back. They've got the mould of a very good squad. They've got 2 goalkeepers who should be very good at League One level in Dawson and Miles Smith. That's preempting Westwood leaving at the end of his contract as well. So I think Wednesday are in a better position than, for example, Derby would have been had they gone down.
I'd agree with that. I really would agree with that. So let's move on to Rotherham then, who, unfortunately for you anyway, because as we all know, you've been.
Come on, mate.
I got. You knew I was going to bring it up, Justin. Of course I was. You've been banging that drum for so long, and they've fallen down at the last day. But as we were just saying earlier, they've had lifeline after lifeline to try and stay up, haven't they? But it just wasn't enough in the end. But having said all that, if they manage to keep hold of this squad, it's again a very good squad to have in League One.
It's a brilliant squad to have in League One. It's a good Championship squad, if I'm being honest with you. And yeah, I have been banging the Rotherham drum, and it was going well in my favour from that sense anyway. For 88 minutes, they were staying up for 88 minutes until Marlon Pack, who I don't think has scored all season, fancied ruining everybody's day in South Yorkshire, and he did that. And also made me look a mug at the same time. But I've got full faith in this Rotherham squad. I've got full faith in Paul Warne. I think he's a fantastic manager. I'd be surprised if there wasn't suitors for Paul Warne. Preston, if you're looking for a manager, Paul Warne is a very, very good potential appointment. So yeah, I'm very confident in Rotherham with the team that they've got, providing they can keep hold of the players that have really impressed. Victor Johansson, for example, before he got clobbered by Carlton Morris against Barnsley, had been unbelievable. His kicking's a bit, his distribution's a bit rough, but from a goalkeeper perspective, he's bloody brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Lewis Wing is one who probably won't be there next season. He's only on loan from Middlesbrough, but he's been a standout player quite recently. And it will be interesting to see who Rotherham do hold on to, but they haven't got as many players who definitely won't be there next season as the likes of Wednesday and Derby. So,
Yeah.
as you say, if they manage to keep hold of that core squad, then they'll fancy themselves to bounce back. Also worth saying that Rotherham have this ridiculous record where they've either finished in the bottom 4 or top 4 for the past like 11 seasons or 7 seasons or something like that. So we're kind of seeing Rotherham as this yo-yo side at the moment, aren't they? And we could see them very well yo-yo back into the Championship in just over a year's time.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise anybody, I don't think, because of the talent that they've got, because of the talent that Paul Warne's brought into the team, and because of a talented manager in Paul Warne. They're a very well-run club under Tony Stewart. And this is why I like them so much, because they've done it the right way, and they've done it. They play a good style of football. I don't think they're COVID running. I say the COVID running literally because of COVID and having games postponed, and also the weather in South Yorkshire hasn't helped. Because of having games postponed, we haven't been able to see that style of play in its full flow. But I really wish we had. I really wish that they were able to showcase what they're about, because they are better than Derby and Wednesday. And I've not been vindicated in my opinion, clearly.
But we were saying on Thursday, weren't we, that Wednesday and Rotherham are both better teams than Derby, and Derby have managed to stay up. Wednesday had the points deduction. If it wasn't for that, they'd have stayed up. So there you go. Sometimes justice isn't fair. Are you sad to see Rotherham go down then?
I am. I actually am, because when you see, I guess I'm really condescending. When you see a small team come up, a small club from a small town come up, and they really wrestle with the big boys, it's really good to see, especially from a Championship level, because it highlights how competitive not only the Championship is, but also the football pyramid in football in the UK is just, that's how it is. Teams can, it's cliched, but any team can beat anyone. Rotherham have showed that. Luton have showed that. Barnsley have showed that. The list goes on, and the fact that Wycombe have been able to take the likes of Derby and Sheffield Wednesday to the last day, to the final day of the season, and still be within a shout, a very, very distant shout from on 10-story building to the bottom floor, just goes to show what it's all about. And I got nothing but praise for football this weekend.
Fair enough. So from what we're saying, then we think Derby could get relegated next season, and then Wednesday and Rotherham will be back in the Championship in a year's time.
Yeah, literally, I think it's Jay Cartwright when he's on the bus, where he's waving, and then it slowly turns into an aggressive gesture as they pass.
I've got nothing else to comment on that. Let's move on just into the rest of the games in the Championship on Saturday. Brentford beat Bristol City 3-1, meaning they finished third, and they'll play Bournemouth in the playoffs. That's a right old ding-dong clash, isn't it?
It's a tasty one. I actually can't wait for that. I was hoping that Barnsley would either get Bournemouth or Brentford in the semi-finals, because those two teams would have struggled to play against Barnsley. But Brentford and Bournemouth is a tasty one, and also I think you knock out one of the favourites for the playoffs. One of the teams have got to vacate the playoffs, in a weird way of saying it. So yeah, it's a big tie.
It is a big tie. In fact, those were the two who I thought would be the final. But obviously they can't be now because they're playing each other. So we could very well... Well, actually, I don't want to say anymore. I don't want to spoil the preview episodes that we're doing this week. Final point on Brentford, though. Ivan Toney scored, meaning he's the first striker in Championship history to score more than 30 goals. I've been saying he's the best Championship striker ever, Justin. Are you finally coming around to my way of thinking?
He's the best Championship striker currently, but best Championship striker ever? No, I'm not coming around because he's. I've got to see it happen on more than one occasion. Glenn Murray's still doing it now, actually, at Forest, but Glenn Murray was doing it for a long time. Palace, Brighton, Bournemouth, etc. Lewis Grabban has done it for a lot of clubs. Nathan Ellington's done it for a lot of clubs. Marlon Harewood did it for Forest and West Ham and Blackpool. Yeah, there's a lot of players I think ahead of him, but I'm not discrediting him. I think he's a fantastic player and certainly the best striker in the division this season.
31 goals, the most ever in a season, and he's also got 10 assists. I don't see what more you want from him.
An important point to make is he's not set the record. He's not set the first division record either, because Guy Whittingham did that for Portsmouth with 42.
I said Championship.
I know. It's a cheeky play of words, but yeah, the records go back further than 2004, right?
Doesn't in my book. Speaking of Bournemouth, they lost 2-0 to Stoke, and they've now lost 3 in a row, which isn't ideal form heading into the playoffs, is it?
No, not at all. It's really crap, actually. To be really blunt, when you're losing games, you want to be close, but they've lost these games without reply as well. So very, very frustrating, I imagine, if you're Woodgate, because the momentum that they built up has now vanished. They don't have any. They're going in not with a fresh pair of eyes, shall we say, but they're going in afresh. They have to start again. Whereas Brentford, for example, I don't have it in front of me, but the amount of games they've been unbeaten for, they've proven that they're hard to beat, whereas Bournemouth haven't, essentially.
It's just mental how they've gone from winning all these games in a row. They were like a steam train, weren't they? Absolutely flying. And then they lose to a Brentford side who were down to 10 men for nearly half the game. They lose to Wycombe, who were bottom of the table at the time. And now they lose to a Stoke side who haven't been in great form for the second half of the season. I just don't really understand how you can go from so good to so bad in such a short space of time. But Jonathan Woodgate's now got a right job in his hands to try and turn it around in the playoffs. Speaking of not ideal form heading into the playoffs, Swansea lost 2-0 to Watford, meaning they've got just 1 win from their last 5 and just 3 wins from 13. But they'll be playing Barnsley in the playoffs, who drew 2-2 with champions Norwich. Wycombe's relegation was finally confirmed. They needed to beat Middlesbrough by 11 goals to stand any chance of staying up. They only managed to get 3. Get this, though. Wycombe finished above Rotherham and Wednesday, which it might not be much because they've obviously ended up going down, but hats off to Gareth Ainsworth.
I think Gareth Ainsworth said, actually, it might have been a couple of games ago now, but he said in one of the post-match presses that I think it was when relegation was pretty much all but confirmed. He was basically saying, we don't want to finish bottom. We want to finish as high as we can. We don't want to finish bottom. And they haven't. And let me tell you, that is such a big achievement for Wycombe. Did they lose the first 7 games?
Yes, they went like 7 games without winning, and they barely, I think they only managed to get like 1 goal in that time as well, didn't they?
And what did you say after the first couple of games?
I didn't think they'd win a game. I didn't think they'd win a game all season. I'll admit that.
And here we are.
But they looked awful, didn't they? In those first 7 games, they looked completely out of their depth. And at one point, when they just managed to finally get used to the division, they started playing quite well. And at one point, we were looking at it, weren't we, and thinking, hang on a minute, they could stay up. And of course, over the course of the season, that's not proven to be the case. But we shouldn't underestimate that this is a massive achievement, and they've only finished 1 point behind Derby.
Yeah, well, we're talking about points. Andre Wisdom, 94th minute winner against Wycombe. That separates the teams minutely. But as I was saying, this achievement from Wycombe is huge. I was saying back in, I think it was March, February time, that if they can take it to the last couple of games with relegation not confirmed, then that achievement is massive. And here we are, 46 games in, relegation not confirmed until the final whistle went against Middlesbrough. Brilliant achievement from Wycombe and Gareth Ainsworth.
Yeah, massive achievement. Quick word on how they'll do in League One next season. You fancy them to bounce straight back up?
It'll be interesting to see what happens. It all depends on Gareth Ainsworth, whether he stays at Wycombe or whether he goes. We know he's been linked with Preston. We know that Blackburn fans fancy him if Mowbray leaves. So a lot of things in the air. They've also got to keep the likes of Ikpiatu, Scott Cashkert, Memete, Josh Knight. Obviously, he's going to go back to Leicester. So all up in the air. But David Stockdale signed a new deal. He's kept 7 clean sheets in the last 15 games, which goes to show the change in mentality for Wycombe, because it could become a lot harder to beat in those games. It's just a shame it didn't happen 3 or 4 games before.
I don't think Wycombe fans should be expecting to bounce back into the Championship next season. I think that's a big ask, but the money that they've made from this season alone will stand them in good stead in the future, and that's another real positive that Wycombe can take from this season. Moving on, elsewhere, there were some bizarre scorelines going around. Coventry beat Millwall 6-1. which came out of the blue a bit. Blackburn won 5-2 against Birmingham. Adam Armstrong got a hat-trick. And that means he's finished the season on 28 goals. And if it wasn't for Ivan Toney, then 28 goals would be seen as a pretty impressive tally.
I think Adam Armstrong's the highest goal scorer without penalties this season, which is a fair justification for him being a very good player at this level. I think I gave him stick earlier on in the season. I thought it was very wasteful, but the last 5 or 6 games he showed me that he's not, and he showed a lot of people that he's not, because I'm sure he was getting stick from Blackburn fans as well.
It'll be interesting to see if he's still at Blackburn next season. He has been linked with a move away, and when you score 28 goals in the season, it's understandable.
Just one quick point on the Coventry Millwall game as well. Biakowski was given the player of the season for Millwall just before this game, and
right, okay, and then he conceded 6.
Conceded 6.
Unbelievable. QPR won again. This time it was against Luton, 3-1. That finished. Preston won 2-1 against Forest. James Garner scored an absolute worldie for Forest. If you haven't seen that yet, have a look for it. It is sensational. And finally, nice. Reading and Huddersfield drew 2-2. Now it's time for this. Yes, it's time for the news. Has Derby's takeover been complete yet, Justin?
No, it hasn't. And well, it might not go through at all.
Yeah, it seems to have all gone tits up, quite frankly. So according to the Daily Mail, Derby's prospective owner, Eric Alonso, has no access to funds because his bank account has been frozen. He's apparently been trying to refinance Pride Park as well in a bid to fund the deal, and it's led to the whole thing being in serious doubt.
Yeah, and for those that... Am I right in saying if you refinance a property like Pride Park, the bank then owns it, so you're then back to paying a mortgage? That's right, isn't it?
It's something like that. I don't really understand house ownership.
So, neither do I, and I bought a house. So, essentially, the Pride Park hasn't been owned by Derby County for the last 2 seasons because Mel Morris has bought it, and it's potentially going back into the hands of either Eric Alonso or a bank. That is red flag central. You're putting debt against the club to buy the club, which is what the Glazers did. This man should be nowhere near football ownership. If I'm being really, really honest, it's scary that he's even being entertained, and that's my absolute honest opinion. Don't at me.
Well, I think one person who might at you is Eric Alonso himself, because he, since this news came out, has been going crazy on Twitter. When you see your owner or potential new owner putting, ranting tweets in all caps lock, it's not exactly what you want to see, is it?
All before 9 o'clock as well. And it's really important to point out as well, the report was by Craig Hope in the Daily Mail, and Daily Mail gets a lot of flack because a lot of the reports they put out about Derby County have been very inaccurate. But this is, if you read the stories in full, the differences in reporting is very, very good, very, very detailed. And if you get a reaction like that from an owner, if Eric Alonso stayed quiet and just let the deal go through, then fair enough. You can almost say that, well, you believe it a little bit more. But the fact that he's come out screaming on Twitter, I assume screaming because he used caps lock, tells me that he's Mr. Billy Bullshit. He's got no money. I reckon I have more money than him, and I have credit card debt. So. Some of
the things you come out with, honestly. But yeah, I think there's been more red flags in the past few weeks than there is in the whole of China. So we'll move on from talking about Derby, because I realise we've spoken about them a lot in this episode, and I promise we won't mention him again, listener, in this episode. Bournemouth's Arnaud Danjuma and Jonathan Woodgate have won the Championship Player and Manager of the Month, respectively. That's gone well.
That explains why they've been crap then.
QPR defender Todd Kane has been banned for 7 matches, fined $6,000, and ordered to take a mandatory education session. It's after he was charged by the FA for abusing a player over their nationality or ethnicity. Moving swiftly on. Transfer news. Could Ashley Young be returning to Watford, Justin. The Watford Academy product has been linked with a move back to Vicarage Road and admits it would be hard to turn down. However, he says he's not had any contacts yet. That would be fantastic to see, wouldn't it?
You would love it. You would absolutely love it. I have a soft spot for players going back to their first clubs after 15 years away. Yeah, it brings a wry smile to my face, which doesn't happen very often. And especially if the local lads from the area as well. Yeah, it's very nice to see, and hopefully it goes through because he'd be a very good asset in the Premier League for Watford.
Yeah, he is getting on a bit now. He is 35, but he has made this transition into a fullback now, hasn't he? Which is a far cry from his days when he was wearing a Watford shirt and he was this flying winger. But considering Watford now, Kiko Fabinho, I think, is out of contract in the summer. So if he were to go, then that fills a nice little gap, doesn't it?
It does, but as well as that, he can play left back as well. I think you get a player. It's like James Milner at Liverpool. You want players who can play in a few positions. If you bring Ashley Young in, you've got an ex-title winner at United, experienced England international, experienced player overall, and a player who's just come back from the Italian league where he's been learning his trade from Antonio Conte, who's one of the best tacticians in the world. So I think it would be a very good signing for any team outside of the top six for me.
Yeah. Not just on the pitch either. It's, in the dressing room as well, isn't it? Just having an experienced head. Norwich are signing defender Ben Gibson and Dimitris Giannoulis on permanent deals. That's because there was a clause in both their loan contracts that their moves would be permanent if Norwich got promoted, which is good news because they've both been fantastic for Norwich this season. QPR captain Jeff Cameron is leaving the club. The 35-year-old is returning to America. Not sure if he's playing anymore, but he's had a decent career, hasn't he?
Wouldn't have expected it because he got off to a really slow start at Stoke and started to come into his own, and then his QPR career started really slowly as well. So yeah, I think it's turned out very well for him. Really, he's a bit of a shithouse as well, so he's a very likable character.
Barry Bannon has won Sheffield Wednesday's Player of the Season award. This comes after Wednesday fans try to sabotage it and vote for Jack Marriott instead. We were saying, weren't we, if Jack Marriott actually had won the award, they weren't going to give him it, were they? But Wednesday fans have been demanding to see the number of votes.
Yeah, we want full disclosure, please, Sheffield Wednesday. I want a fan-led inquiry into those numbers. We need to see the numbers.
I'm all for that. And finally, Neeskens Cabano missed the Middlesbrough game on Saturday with a hamstring injury. Neil Warnock said it happened because he'd been riding Jed Spencer's scooter.
What kind of scooter? If it's one of those micro scooters, this is going back years, isn't it? Oh God, showing my age. The micro scooters that break your ankle. I can see him pulling his hamstring on one of those. But
I think they're talking like moped kind of scooter.
Why would a footballer have a moped?
Why would a footballer have one of those scooters that you use with your feet?
So you can do ollies in your back garden.
And that's how he did his hamstring. It all makes sense now. Justin, shall we finish off the season with a Craig Bryson pub quiz?
Ooh, you tantalising little so-and-so. Go on then.
Tickling your fancy?
Yes.
Go on then. Right, this is the part of the show where we give Justin 6 clues about a mystery championship legend. Must have played at least 200 games in the championship and will have played relatively recently. All Justin has got to do is try and guess who it is from these 6 clues. Justin, your first clue is this. I've made 217 championship appearances, scoring 36 goals.
Screams midfielder for me. Is it Craig Bryson?
It's not Craig Bryson. It'd be good if it was Craig Bryson, though. I made my professional debut for Aston Villa in 2010.
In 2010. No, I don't know why Henry Lansbury's coming to my head. Next clue, please.
2010 is quite late. I thought he would have played a lot earlier, to be honest. I went on to make 113 Premier League appearances for Aston Villa.
Andreas Weimann.
He's only got it, lads. He's only got it, ladies and gents. Wow, fair play. Fair play. What was that? How did you manage to pull that out of the bag?
I think like post 2010, Villa's academy prospects were crap. In comparison to where they were in the Premier League, shall we say? Because Andreas Weiman's a very good player at Championship level. So that's how I got it. Like Gabby Bottenhall, not very good, for example.
I will point out the Craig Bryson pub quiz is usually more exciting than this, but Justin's just managed to, see it off as quickly as possible. So fair play. The other clues were at Championship level. I've played for Wolves. Completely forgot I played for Wolves. Bristol City. Yeah. Watford. Completely forgot I've played for Watford. And Derby. I've missed most of this season with an ACL injury, and I've got 14 caps for Austria. So well done, Justin. Andy Weimann, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll take that. I'll take it. I love it. Thank you.
Well, that's just about it for us on the Second Tier podcast this week and for this season. It's been a roller coaster at times, but let's be honest, it has been a bit of a crap season. And there's one reason for that: lack of fans. Every game this season has missed the energy, passion, which is provided by football supporters, whether it's a dull 0-0 game or one with a last-minute winner. The Championship and football in general has badly missed fans in the ground. Hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, over the course of this season, we've managed to go some way to filling that gap that's been left by us not being able to go to games. And next season, we'll see a return to normality. Listen, we really appreciate your support you've given us over the course of this season, but it's not over just yet. We've still got the best to come, the playoffs. This coming week, we've got 2 shows lined up for you. One with the fans of each teams involved. That'll be coming out on Tuesday, and also an expert panel assessing who's going to win the bloody thing. And that's coming out on Thursday. Once the playoffs is over, we'll have the second tier awards, and also we'll be reviewing each of the championship teams in this season. So plenty to look forward to, even though we've only got 5 games left, 5 big games. So if you're able to take a minute of your time to give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us on, thank you. Goes a long, long way to helping us grow. Justin, anything you want to add before heading off?
I can't wait for fans to be back in the ground. I really can't. I think it was hearing chants from Derby fans yesterday before the game. It really almost did bring a lump to my throat, and just being back in the ground, I think, is going to make everything so much better for everyone. So yeah, keep going, guys. We'll be there soon.
I could not put it better myself. This has been the Second Tier podcast. We'll be back again on Tuesday. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
Thank you for listening.